All right, you guys ready to get started? I'm ready. Yeah, I'm giving you like for this. Just take your time. Let's figure something out. All right. So, only a few announcements this morning. One is to remember that next week is our last meeting of the year, and that we are going to be doing sort of like a potluck holiday party. So Abby, who had a power failure at 2 a.m., didn't sleep very well. She is not going to make it in this morning, but somehow we're going to coordinate how you can all tell us what you'd like to bring, so we can try to make sure that there's not too much of any one thing. But we'll come and we'll hang out and we'll celebrate the holidays together. And we won't have a presenter, but I just got the end of the year stats from 1 Million Cups, and I thought it would be kind of fun to put that up there and just look at all the new chapters that have been created, the number of entrepreneurs that have been served, and it's really cool. I just kind of breezed through it this morning and then put it away thinking it would be more fun to just look at it together next week. So same time, same place, and then we will take 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. It's still blowing my mind that we're even at that part of years. Like, it's crazy to me. Seriously, like the year just disappeared. It's mind-boggling. But it is what it is, so we just keep moving forward. And I always laugh, like people are like, oh, next year. Just another day. It's a fresh calendar, but it's just another day. So every day I gotta use these opportunities to just think about how we can make right now the best possible, and then hopefully set up for the next day to be even better, right? So next year should be better because everything we're doing now should lead us in that direction. And on that note, I just want to share something else that I came across yesterday. So internally as a team, we've been talking about just prioritization and how to just make sure that we're getting the things done that need to be getting done, right? Because for JHD, we're basically done at, the 19th, I'm flying down to Florida. The 20th, announcement number 2, is the small business holiday mixer at Trilla Guest House. So if you haven't already registered, please do. It's only a week away at this point. It's going to be great. I'm going to have major FOMO from Florida. But that's kind of like the last day for us. Like there's not a whole lot of productivity between then and the end of the year. And so I'm thinking about all the things that we have on our list, and I came across, I could use the whiteboard for this, but I came across, Aaron, you might be able to help me here. I came across one of those quadrant maps that are like things that you need to do, high impact, low effort, right? Like that's what you need to be doing right now. And then it would be high impact, but high effort. So then you basically got to figure out like where, that's got to be what you do next, right? And then you keep going around the quadrant and it's like things that you absolutely should not do. Like delete the email, just get rid of it, it's garbage, you're never gonna actually do it. And then there's the thing,
high effort.
Low impact, high effort, and then low impact, low effort are the things that you should be able to give away, right? That's kind of like the delegate box. And it's not a new lesson, but every time you review these things, every time they pop up, it's like this awakening in your consciousness. It's like, oh, this is a whole fresh way of looking at what I have to get done. And now all of a sudden this to-do list that we've got just gets a lot shorter and a lot more focused, and you can get things done. So I hope that helps you as you close out the rest of your year and make it the best that you possibly can to set yourself up for next year. All right. Let me see. I'm trying to go through my brain right now if there's anything else I needed to share with you guys.
What is this list?
Oh.
Because we're not being able to sign.
So, there's a lot of confusion around the QR codes, right? I'll talk about mine first. You've got this QR code that asks you to check in. That's with 1 Million Cups, right? So a minute ago I talked about the stats that they sent me. It's all based on that. How many entrepreneurs or people are checking into all of the different meetings that are happening across the country at the same time, right? Whatever you had to say about yourself when you created your profile, that's where they're getting all that information from. So it's really important that you do check in because it just adds to those numbers. This QR code on your right, is to join our private Facebook group. I am really trying my best to not let people in that I don't recognize, because I really want this to be about us as a community. And I want you to be able to use that to share things that you have going on in your life and your business, right? Karina's been posting things that she's been doing. Trying to think of some of the other posts that have gone out there recently. If I see things that are like, hey, we'll power wash your house. I'm like, well, if you're a member and you stood up here and you presented, I am absolutely going to approve that. But most of the people who are trying to post in that group, I'm denying because it doesn't fit that criteria. So I'm working hard to protect it, utilize it. That's all I ask of you. Well, the bigger ask is to please make sure that you're out there evangelizing 1 Million Cups and telling other people about it, because we do need to schedule presenters. At one point we had like 3 months booked, and now it feels like every week we're like, who's gonna be next? Who do we call, right? I'm constantly thinking about who I can ask. I also want to say that there is no policy per se about how soon you can present again. So if you've already presented and you would like to present again, you are absolutely welcome to. We just need to get you on the schedule. I think that would be a great way of us as a community checking in and hearing how far the businesses have gone or where your idea might have pivoted. I'm not going to take up time to talk about my stuff now, but I will say that probably in the first week or two of January, I would love to share with you what the Nexus has become and what it is looking like, right? So like I have my own updates to share, and I want to be able to use that time just like anybody else is welcome to as well. So that being said, those are my QR codes. There are usually QR codes posted around the building, especially when you first walk in the door, because Launch Fayette would also like to know that you're in the building and would like to be able to have their own statistics about how many people are coming through and how they identify as an entrepreneur or an investor, whatever, or just a member of the community, however you want to identify yourself. So it's really important that we do that. However, when I came in this morning and I scanned it, it just basically brought me to their like login page. And I already have an account, so I just logged in. I'm not sure if by logging in, it checked me in or if there's something else. So I brought that to their attention, and they immediately took down all the QR codes and instead are passing around this sign-in sheet. So what we would like to do is be able to at least have all of our information in their system so that they can send you emails about when the building is closed or other events that are happening. Not so much a marketing tool, more of just communication. So if you haven't already put your name and information on that sheet, maybe just let me know and I'll make sure it gets back to you in a moment. So that was what that is. Anybody else have any questions or things to share? All right, well, if you haven't already met Steve, he has been a member of our community now for a while. He drives a solid 45 minutes to get down here from Brookhaven. I know I always question it when I say it, I don't know why. But from Brookhaven, and originally from Kansas City, which if you haven't already heard me say, 1 Million Cups is created and sponsored by the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas City. So he has been at the 1 Million Cups, like ground zero. And it's really exciting to hear how he feels about our community because, you know, coming from them, right? It's pretty big deal for me to hear that. So he is welcome to present today. Yeah, what's up?
While it's on the top of my head,
Yeah.
one of our meetings at some point next year, we should zoom in or watch a video of the original, of the OG 1 Million Cups and what they do on a week.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
I will say, and I don't know for sure, but the Charleston location, in my opinion, is the biggest and most active chapter in the country, from what I've seen. That is a great idea. I also will say, for those that go live, like we are, you could tap into other 1 Million Cups from all, like on the West Coast, because they are not going to go live for 3 hours from now, right? So you could actually watch something going on somewhere else as well. So that's a really cool idea. Especially if we don't have a presenter that week, that would be a really neat thing to do, just tap into somebody else's. All right. Let me just switch to technology and you'll be up.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. And yeah, I have been a part of 1 Million Cups for a long time. Was in Kansas City for 15 years and had a business there. But this is my first time ever presenting at 1 Million Cups. So I'm excited to do this. And the business that I'm doing is actually new for me. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Steve Childress. I tell stories. And I help businesses tell better stories. So what I do is I consult with companies, nonprofits, people who want to tell a better story, and help them connect with their story so that they can connect better with their customers. So I'm gonna talk to you today about why story is important and I'm going to share some stories from my travels. But first, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I grew up in the mountains of Virginia. My father was a coal miner. My grandfather was a coal miner and later an entrepreneur. But that grandfather was so influential in my life because he told me so many stories about his life. We would sit on the front porch of his house and he would tell me about his adventures in life. And I think some of those stories might have actually been true. I don't know how many, but some of them were true. But if you ever saw the movie Secondhand Lions, I don't know if any of you ever saw that movie. I love that movie. I would recommend it. It's a whole lot of fun. But Hub, Robert Duvall in that movie reminded me so much of my grandfather. Now, not the same kinds of stories, but amazing stories that my grandfather told me. And he gave me a love for story. And in that, I decided when I was in the 4th grade, I wanted to work in television. Just wanted to do it. And so I kind of spent the rest of my time moving toward that. Went to college, got a degree in radio, TV, film. And then I worked in television for 40 years. I know, I look like I'm 12, but I work in television. So in that part of it, you can go on to the next slide. I have told stories for 40 years. I have had the opportunity to work in 22 countries on 5 continents, telling stories of adventure and drama and life. And one of the things that I was able to do was do documentaries. I did a lot of sports television. I have done corporate films and nonprofit films in my career. And I've always kind of gravitated toward real stories. Stories about life, stories about real people. I've had the opportunity to interview over 1,000 people in my career in telling stories. And in those 1,000 people, celebrities, business leaders, corporate leaders, government leaders, professional athletes, but lots and lots and lots of regular people just like you and me. And in that telling of those stories and gathering of those stories, you know what I learned? I learned that people connect with stories about other real people. It's not glitz and glamour, although who doesn't love a great Beyonce story? But it's lots of glitz and glamour that people don't connect with. It's life. It's grit. It's determination. It's understanding what life is like and telling those true stories. And that's why I began to understand how important story is, not just for us individually, but for businesses. And in my travels, I realized that what we need is to hear more stories about the good things that are going on in the world. More stories about how people are transforming other people's lives, whether it's through your business or your organization, and what you're doing to make people's lives better. And I want to tell you a couple of stories that impacted me in some amazing ways. Go to the next slide. This is Julius. I met Julius when I was on a story gathering trip in Kenya for Habitat for Humanity. And Julius told me an amazing story about his life. See, as I met Julius, he had just moved his family into a home that he had built with his own hands. But it didn't start off that easily for Julius. Go to the next slide. Julius started his life with his wife and their first child in this mud hut. Now, it was hard for them. When I say mud hut, that's kind of generous. It was made from mud and earth and cow dung, and it smelled. And I know it smelled because I walked inside. It was not a pleasant experience, and when it rained, they got wet. In fact, it was so bad for Julius and his family that his friends made fun of him. They said to him that he was not capable of providing for his family. And he told me that, and honestly, it broke my heart. And then he looked at me and he smiled and he said that they did not know that I had a plan. And that plan was to work with a lending club that was set up by Habitat. That people would pool their money and they would take that money and they would lend it out to people who wanted to improve their homes. And Julius borrowed some money, built the foundation for his home, paid that off, borrowed a little bit more, built the walls, paid that off, borrowed a little bit more, finished the roof and the inside. It took him 3 years. All the while still living here. But at the end of those 3 years, they moved into that home. And I want to let Julius finish the story.
My children, I see now they are growing. I see them play. They are doing some activities which is necessary for them.
Better?
They run inside, they jog inside. You know, if you see your kids are happy, everybody's happy, and they're always good. I have to say that I'm very happy and I'm very thankful for that that I have been doing. They are good people. I'm a better father now. They have many things they have because they have seen what we have done.
Every time I see this story, I start to cry. In fact, at the end of the interview, Julius was crying, I was crying, our film crew was
We were all
crying.
crying.
Because of what he had done. Because he had overcome the obstacles in his life to do something great, something amazing for his family. I love telling stories like that. But you know, also, there are other stories that are great to tell. Stories about businesses, companies that are doing amazing things, that are changing people's lives for the better. You can go to the next slide. And in fact, I want to tell you a story this morning that just happens to be about coffee, which I thought was pretty fitting considering we're leading cups. So, in this story, it's really about how a company realized that story was the best way to reach their customers and talk about who they were. It all started out when a businessman from Atlanta, thinking he was retiring, moved to Costa Rica and opened a coffee shop. And as he opened that coffee shop, he wanted to meet some of the farmers who were growing coffee nearby so he could use their beans in his coffee shop. He catered to a lot of people who were tourists who were visiting the area. And so he was starting to develop a thriving business. But one of the things he realized when he was talking with these farmers was they were really having a problem. Farms were going out, the family farms were going out of business in Costa Rica, left and right, because they couldn't afford to provide for their families by selling their coffee beans. In fact, they would sell a 20-pound bag of raw coffee beans to a large coffee company, I won't mention any names, but a large coffee company for 50 cents to $1.50 for that whole bag. Wow. Can you imagine how hard it is to make a living doing that? So this businessman said, I think we might be able to fix this problem. So he got together with the farmers and they came up with a plan, an idea, to do a conglomerate of coffee farmers where they would market their own coffee. And they called this company Thrive Farmers Coffee. And the plan was that they would sell their coffee in the US or wherever, and the farmers would get half of the price of the bag of coffee that was sold. So a 10-ounce bag of coffee, 12-ounce bag of coffee that sold for $12, they would get $6 for that, versus the 50 cents to $1.50 for 20 pounds of others. This was transformative, not only for these farmers, but for their families and for their communities, because they started to thrive. This is where I came in, was helping them launch this business and telling their story. One of the things they already wanted to do was connect the farmer directly with the consumer. And so what we did was, and you can go to the next slide, we put the farmers' pictures on the bags of coffee and a little bit of their story in that so that the consumer could know where that coffee came from, know who grew that coffee. And some of the farmers actually put their put their phone number and their email address on the bag of coffee. And people called them because they would drink the coffee, enjoy it, and call up the farmer and say, "Thank you, this is great coffee. I love your story." So that's the beginning of the Thrive Farmer story. You can go to the next one. When farmers like Franco would start to thrive with their families. And I want to show you a clip from the launch video that we did, helping launch Thrive Farmers Coffee. This is the next one.
I know that my future as a farmer is brighter. I know that I can continue to grow coffee, and I have a consumer there that will appreciate my work.
They pick up that bag, and they look at the picture of the farmer that's on that bag. The customer can know and be confident in that their money is not necessarily going to some conglomerate. It's not going to some big manufacturing company. That money that they're spending on their coffee is going to that farmer. That person's picture is on the bag. And in turn, that farmer is able to help support their family and their community in ways that have never been able to be done before.
So this is a great story in itself, right? Because these farmers were starting to really find some traction here. But that's not the end of the story. There's another amazing twist that I wasn't exactly a part of, but I can tell you the story. I can't tell you who, but I think we'll be able to figure it out together. At the time this was launched, there was a Georgia-based fast food chain that sells chicken sandwiches. I can't say who, but it's definitely my pleasure to tell this story. In fact, I could talk about it until the cows come home.
Stop waffling.
So this Georgia-based fast food chain that sells chicken sandwiches had a problem. They had terrible coffee. In fact, people would show up at their restaurants carrying a cup of coffee from their competitors, or worse yet, from a gas station. That's how bad their coffee was. And they realized they needed to find a new coffee vendor. And this part of the story is a little fuzzy, and we're not sure exactly how this happened, but somehow a bag of Thrive Farmers coffee showed up on the desk of the person who was responsible for vetting the new vendors. They picked up the bag, saw the picture of the farmer, read the story on the bag, and tasted the coffee and realized, I think we found it. So they called up Thrive and said, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to make you our coffee vendor, and we'd like to promote this in our stores, in our restaurants, as coffee with a story. And so they built a whole marketing campaign on launching the new coffee off of the campaign we built to help tell Thrive's story. Now, I tell you all of this story because I think it's important to understand that when we invest in stories, you go to that last slide. When you invest in stories, you're actually investing in connection with your customers or connections with your future business partners. And that's exactly what happened with Thrive. So what I want to do in the business that I'm launching is to help people tell better stories and to understand the connection between the stories you tell and how your customers, your clients, the people that you want to work with look at you. And so that's what I do at Media Mountain Group. So thanks for listening.
So Steve, what can we as your community do for you?
Well, first of all, the thing that I really want to know the most is, does this connect with you as a business owner, as people who who are out there every day trying to grow your business or grow your audience, grow your company. Does it connect with you that stories are a great way to do that? And the other thing is, I really want some feedback, some ideas on how what I would do might help people like you. So those are the things I'd like to hear from you.
Okay. You got some hands popping up.
All right.
I was gonna say, so I'm very technically minded, and that's one of the challenges with my business is kind of speaking about what I do in a way that makes sense. And I found, and actually I was talking to Aaron about this too, so I get the props, but the story aspect, he was like, tell your story, and I went up there and I told my story like a few weeks ago. And it really helped because I feel like people actually understood because of the personal experience, which helped them to understand really why I'm doing what I do. And then, what was your other question? I had an answer for that too.
So, ways that you can see that I can connect with customers.
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking is, with if they have websites or things like that, like how they can communicate their story better on the website. Because a website, it can be just verbal garbage, really, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm sure mine has that to some degree. So, but that would be a thing I would think of and tell your story to them. So, yeah.
Thanks, and thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. It really is, and I think a part of what I want to be able to do in helping companies tell their story is help them connect with that story. And it's kind of what Aaron did with you, and give an understanding of what your story is, how you can tell it, and it doesn't have to be video. Of course, video and television production, that's my background, but I also understand how social media plays into that, how telling stories, how print plays into that, how you can tell your stories in a way that helps you connect with your customers or potential customers.
Two things. So, great presentation. You're a master speaker. Fantastic job. So years ago, I was in the digital world, and I read a book called Digital Branding. It always talked about how important stories are. What I grasped out of that is the About Us page. To this day, the very first page I always go to on every website, and I dig through to find the About Us, because I really want to know, why is that company in business, right? And I think that's a huge part of doing business with any company, right? They have to have a clear mission, clear vision, clear value statement. And I always look at the About Us for that. So I recommend everybody have a very, very strong About Us, and Steve can help you with that. I think my own 2 cents is, I've worked with large agencies before, and everything you talked about today, I love every minute of it. Sounds expensive, right? So what I would have is I would have some kind of packages to kind of show, how do I crawl into this? Because again, it seems expensive, because I've done this with other large agencies before, and I know how much it could be. But you also have Rachel in the room here, and I think networking with our local, and Jason, local marketing folks would be a great avenue for you to get business here locally, because she's telling stories every day on social media, and she's using video to do that, and I think it would be an amazing entry point to be able to have her bring you in and help tell that story with folks. So hats off to you. I think
Yeah,
amazing.
thank you, David. The cost thing is always the issue, right? In these kinds of things, and kind of understanding that. And one of the questions that always comes up whenever I talk with someone is, give me a ballpark figure. And I say, what size ballpark are we working with? In that ballpark do you want to be? Because it really is difficult, and pricing and helping work with folks on what they do is a challenge, right? And it can be expensive. I am talking right now with an architectural firm out of Virginia. They've got 9 locations in 6 states. They're rebranding. And so we're talking about how they tell their new story. And so we haven't got to the, well, what's this cost part yet, but we're talking about what I want to do with them, and what I typically feel like I would do with other folks is, let's start with an assessment of what you're doing now. what is your story, and that doesn't have to be an expensive thing. You know, we could take a half day or a few hours and talk about what your story is and where you're going. And so that's one of the thoughts that I've had in that. In fact, I'm working with a friend who's a filmmaker, and doing kind of a gratis project for him. He's trying to launch a film project, and he's worked in the business for a while doing storytelling, but this is a personal project for him. I sat down with him for about 3 hours one day, and we talked through his plan. And we talk on the phone maybe once a month. We've got a call scheduled tomorrow night to talk about how he can move his project forward. And so the storytelling part of that.
Christian, you're on the team that developed the marketing program for Thrive. What is the value of that contract with Chick-fil-A now?
I have no idea now. I know that in the process of where they were versus what happened after Chick-fil-A came on board, their revenue jumped 10 times overnight. So they've grown from there because obviously that's built them more significance in their brand.
It's not just Chick-fil-A, right?
Not just Chick-fil-A. So they're in grocery stores, they're in coffee shops, they're in other places.
So in the millions?
Oh, in the tens of
Teens of millions.
yeah.
So how much was that story worth?
Not as much as we got paid. We wished going back that we'd asked for a percentage of growth. And that, you know. Because when we joined the process of them, they were fledgling. They had gained some traction, but really it was Chick-fil-A. That restaurant chain that I can't mention, that actually caused them to explode. And they now have, I think, hundreds of farmers across the world. It's not just Central and South America now. They're branching out into tea as well. And they want to look at changing the value chain for other commodities. That's the long-term plan. And this business, Thrive, was started with that in mind. How do we give back to the community, the people who are supplying the products that we're selling?
All right, I have one more quick question. What exact services do you offer?
So I talk about it in terms of consulting, storytelling consulting, but it also is, I tell people I have a menu of products, but it's mostly, I want to connect people with what they're doing, rather than the actual production part. I did production for years. I don't want to do production anymore. I want to connect people with resources. And I've got friends and folks I work with all over the country and around the world that could help do the production part. And I tell people I have friends who can do just about anything that you need to do. So my part in it is I want to be a consultant. This is just to be totally transparent here. This is a retirement business for me. I'm not looking to scale this thing to be worldwide or that kind of thing. This is something I want to do to give back to a career that's been very, 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 very good to me, and I want to help other people find how to tell their stories.
My question is, what's the matrix and how do you measure the effectiveness of a brand story? And what do you give to your client as evidence that it's working?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in the past, things that we have done is the evidence has been in how their customers have responded to that, and you can. Jason could probably talk about websites and how visitors come through stories that you have, and where you place that story. It's in some ways not as measurable but it's really in the way your customers feel about you. You think about big brands and what they do. My wife Sharon and I were talking about some commercials that are on TV right now. One is, there's a Coca-Cola commercial out there that it's coming home for Christmas. It's like the road trip. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's not about Coke. It's not about their products. It's about life. And so how do you measure how many sales they're going to make because of that? I think it's hard to measure. But it also gives you a feeling, the feeling that they want to have, you to have when you think about their products and you think about coming home for the holidays.
Can you say clearly who is the customer that you're going after? Is it the architecture firm with 9 offices in 6 states, or is it the mom and pop pizza shop down the street? Who are you going after?
I think it's going to be an established business that is a little bit larger and already has maybe a creative team. The architectural firm is probably a good example. They may be on the upper end of what I'm looking for because they have a creative team in place. What I probably don't have the bandwidth to do is work with smaller groups, although I'm not opposed to that. What I would love to, and maybe you guys can help me with this, how can I find ways to communicate with people? Maybe I'm not working with them directly, but I can speak to opportunities for people to do it on their own, encouraging. I was talking with David a little bit ago. I'm thinking about writing a book about storytelling, about some of the stories that I've had over the years. Something that would help people in ways that maybe I couldn't touch everybody, but I could help people with that process. I've talked about doing some short videos that are, for lack of a better term, a video book that me describing storytelling techniques, those kinds of things. That, how do I monetize that? Not sure yet, but in ways, there's, things like that. Does that help? You hit up for a while.
That's fine. First of all, loved your presentation. Second of all, I wanted to know, the presentation was great. What is your elevator pitch? Like the 30-second.
So I'm working on that.
Okay.
I'm working on that. And I have tried a couple of different things.
You have to try it yourself.
So that's one of the things that I have been working on.
And one of the other things I wanted to say is that while my new business is tutoring SAT and ACT, but I used to do animation and such. So I've very much got the storytelling from the literally telling stories, fictional and all that stuff. And I very much appreciated hearing it from a business. So I'm just commenting really.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Leticia, did you have your hand up too?
You were saying how to reach a bigger, I would think workshops or something where you would have entrepreneurs in a room and kind of do a half-day workshop. I think everyone would be willing to invest that way, and then you would have the resources. One of my questions was, will you be producing it? But it's really about collaborating with people like Rachel and getting the ones that are going to produce but locally, and then if you're doing worldwide, you have all your resources. But I think locally it would be really cool to have a room full of startups or entrepreneurs that want to learn, and I think you would be able to really give them a great opportunity to do that without having to invest half of their stuff.
No, that's a good point. I have thought about that, and one of the things I tell people is I want to teach and model storytelling. And one example is, and we probably already all heard of this, is the hero's story. And what is the hero's story? It's the person that's on an adventure or on a quest to do something great, and they have a guide. And I tell people that as a business owner, I am that guide. I'm not the one who's doing the great stuff, but I want to guide them. And you think about movies where that's prevalent. So Star Wars, Yoda was the guide. In So in Hunger Games, okay, old movie now, still Star Wars not new movie either, but Hunger Games, Katniss was the heroine, but Hamish, flawed character though he may be, he was the guide who helped her through the process. And so that hero's story, Lord of the Rings, and Gandalf as the guide. So being the guide to people as they're learning to tell their stories, rather than the one who's actually telling the story. They're the hero of the story. Your customer is your hero, the hero of your story. So teaching on those kinds of things, and obviously fleshing it out, but that's the basis of some of that. So.
Yeah, I can picture you seeing the lights in the dark and doing the cheer. And you're giving people examples of stories. Do you remember, it was George Hicks, I think his name was. He was the oldest Taylor Hicks. He was the oldest American Idol. American Idol, that's how they draw the customers in. Otherwise, they always draw them in with the story. It'd be a captivated story. Her mom was on drugs. They lived in a car for 15 days. We went on American Idol, and then she sings this passionate song. It was a story that got her. You know what I'm saying? So you're doing this pretty well. I can see you, once again, sitting in dark light, shining like you on stage, and you're telling different things. I like the sweater, switch the sweater up a little bit, khaki pants. I just gave you something. Use the story for your glory. That's why I always notice is when they, I like the interview, the three girls that was trapped in a house. And what was it? It was the stories of who? The people. They had the guy that was saying, I got her out. Then they had the other person, and then McDonald's even got a promotion because he was like, I was trying to get her out, but I was holding my cheeseburger. They was like, what burger was you holding? They was like, the Big Mac. And then Big Mac got the press. You get what I'm saying? So, stories are always great.
Well, and I always tell people the key to stories are in telling the right details. Yeah. The details that draw people in. Yeah. And so, not telling everything, but the right details. And good storytellers know the difference between.
It's the same thing when you ask the nonprofits for donors. People don't care about who you got going on. It's the story.
Well, and the story for Habitat. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 9 years, leading the storytelling unit. I did the bulk of my traveling the world with them. And when we got to Kenya, and we were talking to them about stories. I worked with them for months before we ever went, our Kenya office. And I said, I want stories about people who have overcome. That's what we're looking for. And they kept saying, no, we want to put our president, our CEO on camera and talk about what we're doing. I said, no, that's not what people connect with. People connect with stories about real people just like them who are struggling and want to find out how they did. And so that's how we found Julius. Okay.
I'm kind of going off of Leticia, but I was thinking you could, as a retired business, you could put on a conference and you would be one of the speakers, but you could gather up a whole bunch of other people that do this, media people or other storytellers, whatever. Just put a whole picture together, and that way you could make a lot of money doing that, but also it would be very beneficial for the people attending the conference.
I'm Rachel and Pleasure. You are a filmmaker and a storyteller. I see myself as, I've always referred to myself as a visual storyteller. I got my master's in production design, and I love the psychology of visuals and how to enhance scenes. And I guess over the years, I'm like, no matter what the length of the media is, there's always an arc. And I think the best way to get companies to find their story, to be able to understand what story to tell, is to kind of teach them how to find their art and how to take out all of the things that are not human. I guess we all see ourselves as humans. The most human thing will relate to the most humans, right? So finding the most human story in their art, and that's kind of the way to hone in on their own story.
No, that's good. I love that. I love that.
So I've just been thinking about your elevator pitch or whatever. Anyway, you said something about focus and details. I think you could probably incorporate that. Like everybody has a story, and it's a great grand story of their life. But you help focus on the details, on what matters most in terms of what will connect to other people, their stories. So, I don't know, somewhere along that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have been working on that elevator pitch, and actually tried one. It's like it didn't really connect with folks.
Right.
So
Yes.
I'm working. So thank you. One last thing. I want to say. I know we're probably close on time. But so as I did this, and as I retired and thought, what do I want to do? There were two choices of things that I thought. It was this or stand-up comedy. And so
Same thing.
my wife encouraged me to go this route. You always said you're such a comedian, but I don't think she really meant it that way. So anyway, thank you so much for the input and your time today, and I love it. This is really, really helpful. And thank you, Jason, for creating an environment where this can happen.
Steve, thank you so much for coming up. So I'm just going to take the last minute to reiterate that next week we are going to do sort of like a potluck holiday breakfast party kind of thing. I asked Abby if she would please post on the group, and then everybody can talk about what they're going to bring since she's not here to actually start a list in person.
I started one for you.
Oh, really?
They sign here, they can go this way.
Amazing. So, all right, great. So 2 things. One, there's that sign-in sheet. I know there's some people who came in after I made the announcement, but if you could please make sure that your name is on the sign-in sheet. And this is a sign-up sheet for next week, which is awesome.
Right, but this row right here needs it.
Who didn't get this yet? You guys didn't see this yet? Amazing.
You guys have to change mine. You said breakfast, and I was like, mine's not breakfast.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Whatever.
Brunch.
Brunch? That works.
Well, I'm freezing, so I was thinking soup.
All right, you guys. Well, I look forward to next week. Thanks, everybody, for coming again.